𝓵𝓆𝓆 𝓵𝓆 7 years old. My father is a Palestinian physician working in the radiology department at the nearby Nasser Hospital, and my mother is Egyptian Palestinian. My grandmother is from Sharqiya, Egypt, so my father was able to get Egyptian citizenship through her, and my siblings and I also obtained Egyptian citizenship. I have a sister named Judy and a brother named Hamid. I'm the youngest. On October 15th, there was shelling by the Israeli occupation forces on the Nur al-Sham's refugee camp inside Tulkarm city in the West Bank. My dad was working a 24-hour shift in the emergency department. Before he left, I called for him, my mom, and my siblings. I told them I wanted a family hug, for us all to stand together and hug each other. Dad went off to work, and 2 hours later, we heard the sound of shelling. Our house wasn't very far, and Dad started asking where the shelling was coming from, saying he could hear it was close. He called my mom, but she didn't answer. He called again, and when she picked up, he heard screaming. Dad lost his nerves and ran to the emergency room. As soon as he arrived, he could hear my mom's and brother Hamid's voices screaming. Dad tried to calm them and make sure they and his brother's kids were okay. Then he asked my mom, "Where is Yusuf?" She said she didn't know where I was. Dad kept asking everyone around where I was, but everyone he asked would turn their face away, avoiding answering. Then he went into the resuscitation room and saw a doctor who knew him and me. As soon as the doctor saw my dad, he didn't know what to say. Dad lost his nerves again and kept running around asking, "Where is Yusuf?" My mom had stopped too, and they were all saying, "Yusuf is 7 years old. His is a white sweet boy with curly hair." There was a photographer taking pictures of the injuries and events. He opened his camera and started showing my mom and dad the photos until my dad recognized me from my clothes in one of them. When he asked the photographer where that child was, the photographer just shook his head without answering. Then someone there said, "I was carrying him and took him to the fridge," meaning the mortuary. My dad said, "I'll go see him. Maybe it's not him." But he couldn't walk. He was so scared. When he got there, he saw his colleagues looking at him sadly, and they helped him into the mortuary. When my dad went in, he confirmed it was me, Yusuf, his son, whom he loved so much. When he looked at me, he felt like he was dying. He also found my older cousin, just 2 years older than me, and another older cousin, and his sister-in-law, whose husband couldn't recognize her because she was just body parts. As for my injured cousins, one had a compound fracture in his thigh, arm, shrapnel in his abdomen, and burns. His sister had a pelvic fracture and a deep wound to the bone in her back. When my dad saw all this, he couldn't speak except to say, "Praise God, and God is sufficient for us. Most excellent is the protector." My dad couldn't tell my mom that I had been martyred because when he told my brother Hamid about me, he had a nervous breakdown, screaming, "I want Yusuf." One of the women there was the one who told my mom. My mom insisted on seeing me, even though my dad was very worried about her seeing my lifeless body, who didn't have to say Mom, but she wanted to see me and kiss me before they buried me. My dad said he lost everything, his family, home, and life, but the biggest loss was me, Yusuf, the baby of the family. He said whenever he would leave for work, I would come hug and kiss him and be the first one to run to him when he got home. While my parents were looking for me, a photographer was filming everything. When he posted the video, the whole world grieved for me and many people cried. They said this was impossible to be just a movie that could win an Oscar because nothing in the real world could break hearts like what we're seeing. My mom and dad loved me so much. They said I was the light of the home, and now the home was extinguished, and the home was no more. They commended me to God as one of the martyrs. May God have mercy on all our martyrs, and God willing, we will be birds in paradise. God is sufficient for us. The most excellent is the protector. My heart breaks to share this brutality taking place in Gaza and ethnic cleansing across Palestine. If your heart breaks too, contribute to stop this genocide.
In New York, about 500 members of Jewish Voice for Peace and their allies rallied at the Statue of Liberty Monday to demand a ceasefire in Gaza. Protesters wore black T-shirts reading, "Not in our name." In a statement, 𝕴𝖘𝖗𝖵 of Jewish Voice for Peace said, quote, "The famous words of our Jewish ancestor, Lazarus, etched onto this very monument, compel us to take action supporting the Palestinians of Gaza yearning to breathe free."
What do we want? Ceasefire! What do we want now? Ceasefire! Never again for anyone! Never again is now! Let Gaza live! 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 The whole world is watching! 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 The whole world is watching!
My story is an old one, but it ended with the 22nd of October 2023 in the war. When my family were sleeping in their home at 4 a.m. when Israel bombed my home and killed my family. In my home there was my father, my 2 brothers, my 3 sisters, and 14 of my nieces and nephews, actually 15 of my nieces and nephews. All of them were killed except for one nephew. His name is Omar, and he's 3 years old. He was injured, and he was retrieved from under the rubble. And Omar is only 3 years old. I always think of Omar. Omar lost his father. Omar lost his grandparents. Omar lost 4 of his uncles, 3 of his aunts, and 14 of his cousins. And he was injured himself. So when this happened to my family, I decided not to stay silent. I decided to challenge the Western media and how they talk about the Palestinian people. Because I know the theme of today is about the fall of the empires. And I believe that the biggest empire that have been subjecting the Palestinian people to humiliation and subjugation and oppression is the empire of the Israeli propaganda and media. So I decided to talk about my family and to post about them. And I wrote about them. And I posted about them day and night until people get to know my story, get to know my family. And there, where the Western media came, they started calling me every now and then to have me interviewed by one of their anchors. And unfortunately, their interviews were more humiliating and descending than I ever could imagine. I'll give you an example. In one of the interviews, I told one of the anchors the hosts, that I lost 21 family members, including 14 kids, my nieces and nephews. And he told me, they're just collateral damage. It's okay. Another person, another anchor, told me that Hamas killed my family. Well, I know who killed my family. Another one asked me if my brothers and sisters were close to me. Another one told me that I shouldn't get into a war of words and hate while I was criticizing the Western media coverage. One of them told me that the international law doesn't matter. They don't care about the international law because the international law says the occupation is wrong. One of them told me that the UN is a spin force. And in the comments, many questions the reality that I lost 21 family members. And one of them asked me if I condemn Hamas only a few days after I lost my family. And one of them insisted that I should call Hamas a terror organization. And this is why I believe that the Western media is responsible for the killing of my family. Because no matter what Israel does, because no matter what Israel does over the past 75 years, no matter what Israel does, it is always their actions are justified by the Western media, that the Palestinians are terrorists, that the Palestinians are anti-Semite, that the Palestinians don't deserve democracy or life, that the Palestinians should never have their own sovereignty over their own lands. It is always the Palestinians die and the Israelis are killed and massacred. It is always the Palestinian people are collateral damage. It is always the Palestinian innocent, the children don't matter because they're not white. And that's why I will not forgive the Western media. I will never forgive the Western media. And I believe us, the Palestinians, we have been defying the Western media for a long time, and now we are using social media to defy the narrative of the Western media, and we are making a huge success. But I also believe that it's not only the Palestinians who have the responsibility to share their stories and to talk about their suffering and send their message to the world. I believe it is you, the people who live in the UK and America and the free world. You have even a bigger responsibility towards the Palestinian people to share their stories. And allow me to be harsh with you a little bit. We will not forgive you if you do not tell our stories and convey our message. We will never.
It's collective punishment. I don't think the question here is about the right of Israel to defend itself. It's about humanitarian law, and I'm glad you brought it up, because that same article talks about everything feasible needing to be done before a hospital is targeted, that the combatants must take precautionary measures, and most importantly, must be proportionate. You know, the WHO head said earlier this week that a child is dying every 10 minutes in Gaza. 6 children in the course of recording of this program. Is that proportionate? Is that the right response? Gaza is one of the most densely populated places on the planet. There is bombing going on all over the place, including the so-called safe zones where people have been urged. You know, Malvasia at the south of Gaza is where people are being told to go. It's an area the size of London Heathrow Airport. And we think 1 million people are going into an area with absolutely no infrastructure, absolutely no electricity, little food, no running water, no sanitation. This is not proportionate. This is collective punishment of people who had nothing to do with what happened in Israel on the 7th of October. And worst of all, we're in 2023, and food is being used as a weapon of war. Starvation is being used as a weapon of war. It feels grossly unfair that over 10,000 people, many children, are dying, and our political leaders don't have the moral courage to call for a ceasefire. I just don't understand that.
I'm also saddened by the fact that 535 members of Congress could come together in one breath, fully condemn the horrors of what Israelis experienced. And that there is now only maybe few handful of them who could get to the point of saying, we condemn the slaughter of Palestinian children, of mothers, of fathers, of grandmothers, of grandfathers. Where is your humanity? How do you look at one atrocity and say this is wrong? But you watch as bodies pile up, as neighborhoods are leveled. Israel has dropped more bombs in the last 10 days than we dropped in a whole year in Afghanistan. Where is your humanity? Where is your outrage? Where is your care for people? How is it that we have a president who is talking about releasing hostages, who is talking about getting American citizens out of Israel, but could not get himself to say, I want to save and work to save the hundreds, thousands of Americans is stuck in Gaza? What is wrong with you? How is this possible? I want to say how insane and painful and scary it is to work and serve in a space where we have a member in our caucus say all Muslims are responsible for this, and not a single condemnation comes from our caucus leadership or any member of Congress. How is it that we are serving in a body where there are members who condemn us for asking for peace, for ceasefire? But I am never going to stop saying Palestinians deserve freedom, that we need to free Palestine. And I am never going to stop saying that there is no way that we should allow in sending more bombardments to kill Palestinians. Thank you.